have such a great upload schedule, don't we, Toasty?
The success of Bayonetta in 2009 really pushed Platinum Games into the spotlight as the new kid on the block in the action game space. The game quickly became an industry darling with its bold, over-the-top suggestive themes, addictive combat, and wild set pieces.
Thus, Platinum Games were quick to start planning for a sequel and getting ready to pitch it to Sega. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? With such a massive critical success that sold fairly well, Sega would have been downright stupid if they turned down a sequel. Thus, after a lengthy development cycle, Bayonetta 2 was released in 2014.
I'm gonna stop you right there, that's far from the whole story.
Oh, now we're talking about this?
Yeah, we are.
Oh my god, Toasty, you don't fuck. Goddamn, you're fat, Toasty. Fuck you.
You see, Sega actually turned Bayonetta 2 down at the time due to having financial difficulties, and not having any faith in Platinum after the massive failure that was Anarchy Reigns. So while the game wasn't outright scrapped, it was put on the back burner for a period while Sega and Platinum focused on their own projects in the meantime. Sega decided to throw Platinum a bone and allow them to shop Bayonetta 2 around to other publishers that were interested, so while Sega was the owner of the IP, they would have given their blessing to another company who was willing to foot the bill and publish the game. But Platinum was having a tough time getting anybody on board for this, and it seemed like Bayo 2 would have been soon cancelled.
Around this time, Platinum Games partnered with Nintendo on Hideki Kamiya's new project, The Wonderful 101, a new IP for Nintendo's upcoming console, the Wii U. It seems like the two companies quickly became friends and had a very strong working relationship, and so Nintendo, desperate to make their weird-ass console look appealing after some really confusing early showcases, offered to step up to the plate and publish Bayonetta 2.
Because Nintendo were the only company willing to give the game a chance, Bayonetta 2 was finally formally announced during a Nintendo Direct on September 13th, 2012, coming to the Wii U, and only the Wii U. To say fans were upset about this news would be an understatement. In fact, 90% of fans reacted to this news like this.
This just in, what the f***?
Backlash soon followed this announcement for a number of reasons. First, console exclusivity for a game like this was never going to be met with positive feedback in the first place, especially on a Nintendo console. Bayonetta was a game most people played on the Xbox 360, with a handful of poor souls stuck playing it on the PS Triple.
Because PS Triple, the PS Triple. Shit, money.
With the next generation around the corner, they were likely going to buy either an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4. Bayo 1 wasn't even on the Wii at the time, and Nintendo's business model emphasized casual experiences even your grandpa could get in on.
We would like to play.
People did not trust Nintendo with Bayonetta 2. Concerns sprouted up almost immediately around Nintendo sanitizing the game to fit in with their other franchises, or the gameplay being completely watered down to utilize motion controls. There was panic all around.
In response to all the backlash, Kamiya himself responded saying that Nintendo is the only reason Bayonetta 2 exists at all, and if fans wanted the game on PlayStation or Xbox, Nintendo would be calling the shots on that. Short answer, probably not happening.
But hate campaign aside, more and more trailers were coming out of Bayonetta 2 and looked very promising. But again, you essentially had to shell out $300 to even have a chance of playing it. But after a while, people either warmly or begrudgingly bought the console and the game.
This was a massive thorn in the second game's side from the perspective of the developers and the fans. Platinum had to face the very real possibility of low sales due to being locked on the Mario box, while fans had to invest hundreds into new hardware due to factors completely out of their control. On the bright side, Nintendo fans got spoon-fed one of the genre's greats, so I guess there's that.
It's so fucking yummy!
You're currently staring at the face of a man who spent about $145 on a new tiny little Bluetooth microphone that goes on your shirt collar. That was meant to pair with my phone and make my camera shots sound a lot better. $145 later, it sounds worse. You're not listening to it right now because it's kinda cancer. It wasn't my voice so much, just the slightest amount of movement would mean you would hear. So I am currently in the process of re-recording everything that I just did.
A few moments later.
This exclusivity actually affected the series for the rest of its history, even to this day, as not only are both sequels still locked to Nintendo hardware outside of emulation, but it's caused a great amount of confusion as to whether or not Nintendo owns Bayonetta outright, or even if they own Platinum Games. So allow me to clear the air for those confused. Platinum Games does not have a parent company at this time. They've always worked with different publishers on a game-by-game basis. The publisher for the first Bayonetta game was of course Sega. This means that they also maintained ownership of the IP at the time, and they still do even now. Nintendo comes into the picture as well since they're the publisher of Bayonetta 2 and 3. So that means that they assisted with development and handled distribution, but there's no actual ownership involved. So no, Bayonetta is not a Nintendo franchise. Sega still has full ownership, and it's why you still see their logo in Bayonetta 2 and 3.
At the time, I too was upset at the exclusivity deal, but I get why they did it, because no one else was helping. But then Nintendo came in and essentially saved the day, which is fine and all, but it still sucked. Regardless, I bought a Wii U all the way back in 2015, and I haven't touched it in years.
Me personally, this was years before I even played any of the Bayonetta games, and even as a kid who didn't have a stake in any of this news still kinda bugged me. These days, I'm heavily against exclusivity of third-party games, as it's 100% anti-consumer, but the circumstances Platinum were facing kind of forced them to crawl up to Nintendo. Kamiya was right, it was either a Wii U exclusive or it didn't exist at all. Regardless, Bayonetta 2 was released on September 20th, 2014 in Japan, and about a month later in the States, exclusively on the Wii U, with a Nintendo Switch port arriving in early 2018, which we'll be covering today. I didn't play Bayonetta 2 until less than 3 years ago. I never had a Wii U, and I only waited so long to buy this because I was hoping for a discount that never happened. Gotta love Nintendo! It was received extremely well regardless of the exclusivity buzz, and was even nominated for Game of the Year at the very first Game Awards. That's one thing that stupid tablet box can hold above its head, right?
I guess so, but I'm still gonna give you shit for barely playing it 2 years ago while I at least tried my best to play it around its release date, because once again, Toasty, you don't fuck.
Yeah, whatever you say, Grandpa.
Respect your elders, bitch!
Enough of the yap. Let's see if Platinum's Wii U sequel delivered on expectations.
But yes, ladies and gentlemen, us gamers are oppressed by the e-girls, but we will rise up and defeat the e-girls by eating pie or something, I don't know.
Bayonetta.
You don't get an intro cutscene before the main menu like you did in the first game, but the intro after starting a save file is still there, even taking place in the falling clock tower. Doesn't make much sense because it was clearly a flashback sequence in the first game, while this just kinda happens with no context as to when this takes place. But it leads right into the prologue with no proper segue, so it seems like Platinum's storytelling skills haven't improved much.
The game's opening is pretty much the intro to the first game, and when I saw it for the first time back in 2015, I was grinning ear to ear, not gonna lie. Seriously, it follows the beat to a T, but in a much livelier environment, aka New York. Also, the game is technically a Christmas game, since it takes place around it.
Oh, that's just wonderful. This would have made for a great Christmas video, and now I'm even more pissed that you no-call no-showed back in December because instead I had to get boned that day.
Will you let that go already?
Alright, fine, let's just get back to the game.
The game starts out pretty damn strong. Over-the-top intro, Bayonetta and John fighting off angels that are attacking New York City, and then out of nowhere... And it really does show just how dire the stakes have become.
For all her shit in the last game, this is well-deserved karma. We'll discuss the story later since I know for a fact you don't care, but I will say the intro is certainly more impactful than the first game. This directly lays a primary motivation for Bayonetta instead of feeling like a series of random events with no purpose.
With the graphics, Platinum really worked their magic once again. It may not be that next-gen sequel we were hoping for, but the visual upgrade is still present in terms of the overall style. The dreary sludge look of the first game has been washed away, and now everything is bright and colorful, and I swear to God, I thought this was at 1080p 60 FPS, because it looked so smooth and clean on my TV back in the day.
No, it was certainly 720p on both the Wii U and the Switch. You'd think there'd be a resolution bump like with the other Wii U ports on the console, but unfortunately that didn't happen here. Probably for the best to save on performance, but regardless, both of these versions look practically identical. Resolution aside, the art direction is a massive improvement and the frame rate is still silky smooth. Even in taxing set pieces where there's a few drops, you still mostly maintain a solid 60 frames. Considering the Wii U consistently performed worse than the Xbox 360 when it comes to multiplats, this is impressive stuff and I'm dumbfounded Platinum pulled it off.
Every character got a new design, even my boy Luca here, and he's still me for real, but either way, most of them look pretty neat. However, the one who's most different is Bayonetta herself. She got a haircut and I really like it because it makes her look younger, and her new drip really makes her look more regal, a look that's very much complemented by her new color scheme. Instead of black and red, we now have black and blue.
I like the design, but I still prefer her look in the first game. I loved how her long hair formed the shape of a witch's hat, while I'm not a fan of the Karen haircut they went with here. The new guns look gorgeous though, blue and gold are such great colors together. Environments are certainly an upgrade from the first game, lots of more interesting locations and they don't blend in nearly as much as they did before. The withered hardware of the Wii U still rears its ugly head at times, and the intro especially looks like they took an existing game and cheese grated the fuck out of it, but I'd say this is one of the best looking games on the console.
It really makes you wonder how good this game could have looked on more powerful hardware. as both me and Toasty agree that Nintendo's glorified iPad really holds back this game's full potential.
It's really not a deal breaker though. The style and optimization alone really make this game look better than its predecessor, even if industry politics kept this game from reaching a wider audience.
Thanks, Obama.
The gameplay is essentially an evolution from the first game. All of the fundamentals are here and accounted for. Punches and kicks, dodging into witch time, bullet arts, taunts, the magic meter, torture attacks, items and unlockable weapons, nothing was cut, and all of it is essentially tweaked to perfection. Now, with pointless touchscreen controls to make Wii U owners remember why they bought this damn thing in the first place.
Hot button popcorn, that's it!
Double Yoshi explosion!
Nobody ever used these, why even bother?
Your default moveset is close enough to the first game to where veterans will feel right at home, but there's some changes to it that spice things up, and combos that start off with a kick are finally viable since there's not as much of a huge startup time. The enemy pool got a massive overhaul as well. You'll be up against new faces all throughout the game.
All of these elements have been dialed up to 11 and makes the first game, which was already completely insane, look tame in comparison to Bayonetta 2. Torture attacks are crazier, weapons are more creative in concept, and the enemy pool was effectively doubled with the addition of demons to the fray, with the designs of said enemies being even more unhinged than they were in the first game.
Dropped weapons make the return as well, but the biggest change is that instead of replacing your normal attacks for a short period, it's mapped to the fire button, so you can use them as yet another combo mix-up tool.
I'll get this out of the way now. Basically, all of the kinks from the first game were ironed out, so nothing during combat gets in the way of your pleasure. Obscene super armor and even the smallest of enemies, completely mediated, and now it's the big guys who are more resistant, making Witch Time's implementation less obnoxious. The useless equipment system improved dramatically, and now there's items you actually want to buy. Overly demanding button mashing quotas, nerfed and much easier to do with just one finger. Those fucking garbage instant kill quicktime events plastered in the middle of cutscenes? Gone.
It's like the team went back and studied the first game as much as they could so that each flaw could be squashed to make something truly excellent.
The big addition to the sequel is an all-new Umbran Climax mode. Think of it like Rage from God of War. You can use the magic meter to give yourself a huge universal buff, all of your strikes are now wicked weaves, and finishing blows summon entire monsters to absolutely wreck their shit.
I really love this mechanic, since it's the perfect and natural progression of Bayonetta as a series and as a character. Seriously, this is so satisfying, just because of how powerful and indestructible you feel, and if you're really creative, you can manage to pull off 2 combos during your meter drain. Seriously, this is peak power fantasy if I've ever seen one.
I don't like this mechanic. On paper, it's a perfectly fine idea, but in practice it leaves a lot to be desired. It doesn't do that much more damage, and it actually comes out slower than a standard combo string. I'd rather use the magic meter for torture attacks because they're basically guaranteed to kill enemies that aren't at completely full health. I only ever use Umbran Climax during a boss or giant since it's essentially a free uninterrupted string so you can plow through any super armor they have. Using it on regular enemies is not only boring as hell and a waste of resources, but it completely defeats the original design philosophy of Bayonetta's combat.
I get where you're coming from, Toasty, but personally, the fun factor of summoning ginormous monsters to paint the walls with groups of enemies is enough to please my idiot brain. Not to mention, her having this kind of tool in the first place adds to her ridiculous power level.
You know what? Good point. I just wish it was implemented better. It just doesn't feel all that fun to use compared to other games in the genre with a similar mechanic. But speaking of power and dominance, that's just one aspect of Bayonetta. And since we're dealing with a publisher like Nintendo, there was a very big concern before this game's release that the trademark edge would be toned down. So the question is, did they exercise their control?
Hell no, they didn't.
Nintendo let Platinum go wild with the game's crude humor. Granted, the random sexual innuendos and cutscenes were drastically pulled back, but this was likely a creative decision, not an executive one. Other than that, everything else remained intact. Bayonetta's clothes unraveling with combos, foul language, plenty of violence, and Bayonetta's various seductive taunts are all here and accounted for. And if you hold down the taunt, she'll quote Hideki Kamiya.
If you need to learn how to talk to a lady, ask your mum.
Speaking of Kamiya, I nearly got blocked by him. True story.
Everyone gets blocked by Kamiya, dipshit. It came free with your fucking Twitter account. Anyways, it's quite surprising to see Nintendo be so lenient on the sexual themes in the series, considering A, they've had a mostly family-friendly image prior to this, minus a few exceptions, and B, this came out in 2014 when the culture war was starting to brew in its early stages. In fact, Nintendo partially had a hand in what showed up in the final product, as Platinum pitched costumes based on their characters only for Nintendo to send them back with alterations made which made them more revealing.
This was definitely proof that Nintendo wasn't messing around with publishing Bayonetta 2 and really wanted to get mature audiences interested in the Wii U. And how did that turn out?
Back to gameplay, the weapon system, while remaining mostly intact, did receive major changes in terms of the arsenal you have at your disposal. The katana from Bayo 1 comes back if you have Bayo 1 save data on your console, but everything else is entirely new.
Relatively, they're still the same in spirit, but are new weapons. We have swords you can put on your feet, flamethrowers that turn into fire extinguishers, another whip, a giant hammer, a scythe with smaller blades that shoot out, and even a goddamn chain chomp. These are pretty good weapons in concept, but honestly, I mostly have the swords on me at all times because they're the only ones that actually have some punch to them.
Most of the weapons in Bayonetta 2 aren't nearly as gnarly as you would expect. I remember getting so excited at the prospect of dual flamethrowers, but they're incredibly underwhelming. Back in the first game, getting a new weapon was a fucking event. You would bring Rodin record pieces, walk out with a shiny new toy, and watch with your newfound rape face as you tear angels to shreds. They're not overpowered by any means, but it's a meaningful enough boost to reward you for going out of your way to find them. In Bayonetta 2, most of these things don't really feel all that powerful. I understand they wanted it to be more balanced, but it makes looking for these weapons feel pointless because you're not getting a worthwhile power boost as a reward for going out of your way to find record pieces. And it's a damn shame because the weapon concepts this time around are absolutely absurd and there's way more of them. Since this is a sequel, it's bound to introduce new set pieces and gameplay styles. You get to kick it like in Titanfall controlling a mech, ride some unicorn thing with a sword on its head, and even fly in the air with your wings to take on giant bosses in the sky. I love the flying segments because you're still playing the normal game for the most part, just in the air.
This is pretty obvious. This is one of those quirky alternative gameplay styles that Platinum loves to sprinkle into their games, and Bayonetta 2 is full of them. Some of them are callbacks, like the Sovereign Power is a clear callback to Isla del Sol, which is funny because that itself was a callback to Space Harrier, and Sovereign Power is a callback to Star Fox. So in a way, this callback stage is also a callback to another callback to said callback that also...
The mech is pretty cool in concept, but in execution it's honestly really lame.
Once again, Toasty, you don't fuck, and I disagree.
If you would allow me to explain, this thing basically has the same core moves as you do. Punches, kicks, guns, dodging, and Umbran Climax. It just feels way clunkier, with the main difference being that you can use the dash to run over enemies, which admittedly is pretty cool. This thing just doesn't have the adrenaline punch that it should, and it makes me just wish this was another normal level. The mech also has this stupid exploit where alternating between the punch and kick buttons basically gives you an infinite string.
That's the thing, Toasty. Just like a lot of weapons, you can hold down the button to keep firing shots, and here it's no different, but it's much more satisfying since it rains literal hell down on them. It just feels so good doing it too. The mech is just a lot of fun for me for the simple power fantasy alone.
I get that, but for me, if you're going to introduce a new gameplay style in a game like this, it needs to have a purpose and to stand out in a meaningful way. Give me something new to do with this thing that I can't normally do in the rest of the game. It's like how Wrath of Cortex had sections where you play as Coco, but she was literally just a worse version of Crash. Thankfully, Bayonetta 2 doesn't double down on supplemental gameplay styles for the sake of forcing variety. It knows exactly what it is and it stays in its lane, unlike this guy. What? You don't get any obnoxious difficulty spikes in the game either. In fact, after playing Bayonetta 1, this game's playthrough is relatively carefree in comparison. Normally I would have complained about them nerfing the difficulty, but this time around hard mode is unlocked from the start, so you can just select that if you think Bayo 2 isn't challenging enough on normal. The difficulty in Bayonetta 2 is a lot more welcoming than the first game, which makes sense considering this was essentially developed with a brand new audience in mind.
Toasty, I don't know why you're so nonchalant about this game. It improved upon all of the first game's flaws, so I expect a more positive review in that regard.
Correct, and I praise the game accordingly.
Yeah, I guess, but it doesn't feel like a celebratory review at all. It just feels more like a retread, really.
That's because that's exactly what Bayonetta 2 is. Now look, Bayonetta 2 has a lot going for it. It's got some really fun combat that appeals to both hack and slash enthusiasts and casuals. The laundry list of grievances from the last game are mostly gone. The visual upgrade is really nice. There's a lot to like here. But making a sequel needs multiple ingredients. Ironing out flaws and spicing up graphics are nice, but you gotta have that special sauce that makes a new entry stand out. And as much as it pains me to say it, Bayonetta 2 simply does not have that. With a major follow-up like this, you would normally expect some kind of ambition with trying to justify making one in the first place, some added complexity and variety perhaps.
With the exception of Umbran Climax and a handful of gimmicky set pieces like the mech, nearly everything in Bayonetta 2 is more or less derivative of the first game. That doesn't have to be a bad thing though. Sequels don't always have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes the best answer to follow up a game is simply doing it again, but better. Bayonetta 2 does that, but it doesn't do that much else to compensate.
Sequels do not need to completely change themselves from their original outing. As long as the package as a whole feels unique, simple gameplay improvements should be enough. The problem is that Bayonetta 2 as a whole feels like Bayonetta 1.5. Both games involve the titular character traveling to some faraway place alongside a short comic relief sidekick she refers to as a Little One. Baldur returns in this game's story despite him clearly dying at the end of the first game. Ripto, is that you? You revisit several locations from the last game despite having to go somewhere else. Bosses return again despite appearing multiple times already the last game. A few music tracks are recycled. This feels like the kind of sequel you'd see released a year after the last, not half a decade later.
I believe it does build upon the series ever so slightly while still retaining similar beats. They even managed to do time travel the best way they could without devolving into quantum physics level of confusion like the previous game, and as much as Toasty doesn't fuck, I believe they did some great additions and much needed upgrades from their first rodeo, and I will forever defend Umbran Climax as a much needed upgrade.
We can argue about Umbran Climax all day, but that's essentially all the game really brought to the table outside of a new weapon lineup that isn't worth using because of how underwhelming they are. Playing this game again when capturing footage for this video honestly felt like going through the motions at times. What makes sequels exciting is what sets them apart from their predecessors, honest-to-God innovation that gives the game a reason to exist other than just polishing something we already have. For example, Batman Arkham City didn't just feel like a refreshed Arkham Asylum. Other than switching to an open-world setting, you have new combat mechanics, fancier combos, a wider range of gadgets, and much improved stealth. Mortal Kombat X didn't just feel like an upgraded Mortal Kombat 9, it introduced the variation system, running, stage interactions, and brought back and improved brutalities for the first time in over a decade.
I don't know why you're having such a huge problem with Bayonetta 2 playing it safe, considering you spurg out over Klonoa 2.
Fair point. Counterpoint, that game still had a lot of unique elements to it, like the grander scale of the environments and new traversal abilities. It felt bigger and better, a true next-gen sequel. Bayonetta 2 does have more open areas, but they really don't add that much and honestly feel kind of forced, or they only exist to serve the weird changes they made to opening chests. Get a load of this, some chests you open don't give you the loot right away. Instead, they break into little pieces and you gotta collect them under a time limit. It does nothing but waste your time and it feels like they were really running out of ideas to make the game feel different.
Come on, Toasty, they're just chests that you only have to open just once and that's it.
It still proves my point that the game wasn't really brimming with creativity.
But Toasty, what about the new enemies? They're much bigger, grander, and scarier and gay than ever before, and we also got new summons from Bayonetta.
True, but I already gave the game credit in that area earlier, and those new summons are just combo enders for that dumb Umbran Climax I already said I didn't like that much. There are cool things that Bayonetta 2 does, but it just doesn't have that ambition you would expect. Now don't get it twisted, this is not me dogging on the game's overall quality. In fact, I think Bayonetta 2 is a blast and it fixes up nearly every problem I had with the first installment. If you're an outsider looking in, I say go for this game first before jumping into Bayonetta 1. What I'm trying to say is that there's more to making a memorable sequel than just fixing problems. It needs to stand out.
This game is still fun though, right, Toasty?
Well, yeah, it is, but there's just nothing to it. This game gives off the impression that it was rushed out the door, but the more you analyze it, it's very deliberate in its lack of innovation. Everything about the game, from the fixes to the combat, the visuals, performance optimization, music, which I'll get to in a bit, cutscene animations, all of it is crafted with loads of love and care. This is a high quality product. But the game itself is the fucking nothing to end all nothings. It took 5 years, a publishing shakeup, console exclusivity controversy, and pre-Gamergate bad omens to bring us this? I remember having a great time with the game on my first playthrough years ago. I actually beat it within 1 day. And I still stand by the fact that the game is fun, but at the end of the day, this is just goddamn Bayonetta 1 again! All they really did to make this game unique outside of Umbran IMAX was change up what kind of one-off gimmicks you're put into. In the first game, you're fighting angels on a highway until catching a motorcycle midair and being thrown into one of the coolest segments in the game. Then you have Bayonetta 2, which just goes, alright, get on a horse now because it's time for a gimmick section. It's a prime example of the second game just doing the same shtick as before.
Maybe it's because I'm not a game reviewer and went from a 4.0 GPA in high school to being completely stupid as an adult, but I still can't help but be wowed with Bayonetta 2. Sure, it's not the most exciting sequel in the world, but it's more of what worked before, just better.
The way I see it, fixing problems in a sequel is the bare minimum. There's gotta be something new, and if a sequel absolutely has to rely on old ideas, it should make them bigger and bolder to feel new. and this game does neither of those. Sure, finding flaws is much harder and the overall package isn't as bogged down by problems as the last game, but that's because it doesn't really push the needle for there to be much room for error in the first place. It's not highly polished because it's just that good, it's highly polished because they didn't do much else besides polish what was already there. I'm very sorry if this review feels meandering and dull, but that's because the game gives me nothing to work with. The genuine issues I have with the overall package are minor complaints that aren't anywhere near as severe as the first game's problems. The game is fun and great, but it's not impressive. Bayonetta 2 is just the same old story, same old song and dance.
And speaking of story, instead of it being unclear and confusing like the last game, this time it's easier to follow and straight up bad. I agree with Toasty and enjoy the main motivation for Bayonetta to save her friend, but that gets resolved before you even reach the final stretch of the game. The big climax evolves around this little asshole named Loki, and to be honest, I really hate him.
Yeah, I don't like this character either. His voice is annoying, he only really serves to explain why Baldur is all angry, and also, why is Baldur back? He very clearly died in the last game. Could they seriously not think of one more original character for this game's plot? Oh yeah, and I didn't get to this yet, but despite the game repeating so many of the first game's beats and ideas, they still felt the need to dedicate multiple chapters to a time travel flashback featuring Bayo 1 locations, Bayo 1 music, Bayo 1 enemies, Bayo 1 weapons, and Bayo 1 torture attacks. Really? Even with how much you took from the last game, you still felt the need to dedicate several chapters to key jingling?
I disagree with you, Toasty, since we finally get to see what went down during the witch hunts. Sure, it may be fan service, but I really enjoy uncovering the backstory of the Umbran clan and Bayonetta's mother.
I remember liking this part when I first played the game blind, but going back for this video had me looking at this section thinking to myself, wow, really? And yeah, I get it, story details and all that, but get real, you're not playing this for the story. I know it seems like I'm dwelling on the same talking point, but what else is there to say? Combat is fun, gimmicks are whatever, bosses exist. Actually, on that note, I will say the one-on-one fights are much improved upon what was essentially happy slaps with Jean from the last game. I don't feel like I have to find exploits to beat them this time, so that's a plus. These are actually kind of fun. I don't know, man. I feel like I'm running out of material already. This game just gives me nothing to work with.
What about the multiplayer?
Multiplayer? Yeah, Bayonetta 2 has 2-player multiplayer. Did you remember this was a thing? I didn't. This is Tag Climax, a co-op PvE mode where you can play online with a friend. A very interesting idea, to say the least. I'm actually on board with this.
This mode has a bunch of scenarios you can unlock in the story, as well as a bunch of playable characters like Baldur and Rodan, which need to be unlocked first, of course. My Wii U doesn't work anymore, and I've been playing the game on an emulator recently as opposed to a real Switch, so I can't really play Tag Climax.
Thankfully, I've got the benefit of real hardware, and despite refusing to drop a cent on a paid subscription service in order to play your own game with your own friends using your own internet, online subscriptions for consoles are a scam, the Switch port of the game actually added local play. During recording for this video, I took my Switch and the game over to a friend's house to capture footage, but was met with utter disappointment. You see, Tag Climax, even in the Switch version, is still an online-only mode, and that local play that was added is actually local wireless play. Meaning to play this locally, you need 2 Switch consoles, 2 copies of the same game, and both need to be on the same Wi-Fi network. I understand that implementing couch co-op via split screen would have probably been taxing on the hardware, but I was honestly willing to put up with a dip in performance if it meant I could play the game with someone else. Hyrule Warriors managed to accomplish this, so why can't this game?
You had to buy. I
gotta go buy it.
You gotta buy a copy. I gotta buy a copy. Then you gotta buy another $300
Nintendo Switch.
I gotta buy a $300
Nintendo Switch.
Just so I can play some
Bayonetta
2.
You know what? Maybe I'm just a little bit too harsh. I guess I was expecting a little bit too much from a $60 Switch port! Well, at least they're not charging $80 for ports, right?
Toasty, you good? You okay, buddy?
Can we just talk about the soundtrack now? Enough with the mopey attitude, because Bayonetta 2's soundtrack is another slam dunk. My favorite track is definitely the main battle theme, Tomorrow Is Mine. It absolutely wipes the floor with Mysterious Destiny from the last game, and the singer this time actually sounds enthusiastic here.
Now I'm in the mood for a fight. You won't know what hit you when I spin around with you in my dust. Then bang bang down down again. It's my desire going for the win. Tomorrow is mine. You better run. Don't wait, here I come. No, the fuel in my fire won't run dry.
My only complaint is the amount of times you hear it throughout the game. It's not every single fight, but it's a good chunk of them. Would have been nice to have the song start at random sections instead of the beginning every single time, but I'll be honest, I'll take this song every day of the week over Halloween, Halloween.
You definitely go into the game with the right energy with that awesome cover of Moon River in a similar vein to Fly Me to the Moon in the first game. And this series sure loves the moon. The ambient tracks are somehow even better than they were in the first game. And the action set pieces still keep that over-the-top bombastic sound that we've come to expect. Voice acting ain't really much to write home about since it's mostly the same cast from the last game, although Baldur's old VA does not come back despite having two new actors for both his old and younger self respectively.
At least we still got our Lord and Savior Enzo sounding as good as ever, but he got replaced as well, and I honestly couldn't tell it was a different actor. The replacement did a very good job at replicating Chick Venera's voice.
Forget about it.
Let me tell you something.
Helena Taylor, Gray Delisle, Dave Fennoy, and Yuri Lowenthal all reprised their roles, and the range of some of these people is insane.
Our friends in Paradiso are far too quiet. I'm sure you've noticed.
If I get expelled, my parents are gonna send me to military school! Can you think of anything worse?
This is part of the Creeper's old costume. And look at this, a transfer slip from Crystal Cove High.
You are Raiden's chosen one? No wonder your realm has lost so many tournaments.
Well, you can stay in the house if that's what you're asking, but I was over guys like you when I was like 5.
The cutscenes are still a lot of fun though.
Hold up.
So that's Bayonetta 2. It's a video game.
It really doesn't move the needle all that much. In my book, that's perfectly fine, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I certainly think this game is great and there's lots of fun to be had, but for a sequel, this thing just does not cut it in my book. With the exception of Umbran Climax, different gimmicks, and nerfed weapons, this game is just what Bayonetta 1 should have been. There's new stuff I certainly welcome in Bayonetta 2, like the flight sections and more unique weapon ideas, but the rest of the game is just too derivative. That's certainly not a jab at this game's quality whatsoever though, it's just uninspired and safe. If you're an outsider to the series and looking to give one of the games a shot, I recommend this one, it's a great game. Physical copies for Wii U tend to be pretty cheap, and the Switch version has finally gone down in price as the console entered its elder years, averaging around $40. But if you're going digital, be prepared to spend full price on a game that really shouldn't have been that expensive to begin with, let alone over a decade later. Even if you've already played the first game, you'll still certainly have a lot of fun with this, just don't spend $60 on this game. It's not worth it considering it's over a decade old now, and it borrows a lot from a game that costs less than half that price these days.
At first I thought you were being negative for the sake of being negative, but now I understand where you're coming from, Toasty.
I honestly wasn't expecting to be that negative, but it is what it is.
Bayonetta 2 launched in what was a pretty crowded season for video games. Late 2014 had a lot of big name releases, even the Wii U, so they were eating good getting the sequel to such a beloved game, with the general consensus being very positive. Hell, Bayonetta 2 even got a Game of the Year nomination at the very first Game Awards. Not that it matters these days, but it was impressive at the time. This game was a critical darling, and the sales certainly reflect that, right Toasty?
Bayonetta 2 bombed. The only sales figures I can get my hands on for the Wii U version suggest 700,000 copies sold within 2 years. And it was only 300,000 during 2014, and that's counting all worldwide sales, not just one region. A complete ball drop compared to the first entry's 2 million on just Xbox 360 and PS3 alone. And that game is tied with Grand Theft Auto 5 with the amount of ports it got.
Why did the game see such abysmal sales?
Shouldn't it be obvious? It was exclusive to the one console most Bayonetta fans didn't have, and the console the general gaming community quickly abandoned after Sony and Microsoft launched their next-gen consoles at the time. I'm not gonna go over the Wii U itself because everybody and their grandmother has done a Wii U video on this godforsaken website, but it really should have been obvious to Nintendo from the start that locking this down as a console exclusive was a risky move at best. How the shit do you expect a consumer looking forward to a sequel to spend hundreds of dollars on an entire new hardware ecosystem just to play it, when they could have done so on the PS4 or Xbox One they likely just bought? I'm already against exclusivity in general, although it is something I do tend to live with considering how it's basically on its last legs in our current gaming industry. But exclusivity of third-party franchises previously available on multiple platforms is a practice I genuinely despise. It helps absolutely no one, fucks over loyal fans, and is guaranteed to hurt sales. I don't know if this is difficult to figure out, but let me try to break it down so a multi-billion-dollar corporation can easily understand it. The more people you try to sell to, the more money you're likely to make. We got exclusivity from Sony for Final Fantasy XVI and it sold less than our expectations? How did that happen? Hello, anybody home? If Nintendo very well knew that a lot of Bayonetta fans weren't going to buy another console for the game, then were they seriously expecting general hardcore audiences to look into the console for the sake of one singular M-rated exclusive, while the television ads running for the Wii U at the time looked like this?
Yeah, look like I've been upgraded.
Here's Mom. We already have a Wii, sweetiekins.
Here's you. Wii U is a total upgrade, Mother.
It's a no-cut
No,
thing.
there is a cut.
I gotta get one. We
Go
can team up
get your
together.
mom and get one so you can get in.
Mario and Peach together. Me and Gina together.
And this is the game they're trying to sell? If a high-profile sequel selling this poorly due to exclusivity isn't proof that the practice is detrimental for any party involved, I don't know what is.
I'd say it's hard to blame Nintendo for doing exclusivity for Bayonetta, considering they are in the console business after all. If anything, Sega is more to blame for this game failing because they didn't want to fund and publish it in the first place, which led to the whole exclusivity mess going down. I can't believe they thought an easy sequel to one of the best reviewed games from the time was dropped in favor of getting a GameStop employee pepper sprayed over Sonic having blue arms.
Never change, Sega. Never change.
It's very clear that most Bayonetta fans weren't willing to buy an entire console just for a sequel, especially one that's this derivative, as the Switch port of Bayonetta 2 sold only around 400,000 copies in the span of just a month, toppling the entirety of the 2014 holiday season's Wii U numbers, and to this day, the port has sold over 1.2 million copies. It really goes to show that nobody wants to buy an entire console for a third-party franchise, as most people only played Bayonetta 2 years later on the Switch.
The console was already selling like hotcakes due to its unique hybrid status and was achieving success based on its own merits rather than locking down games as exclusives. Bayonetta 2's Switch port was so successful because people already had the device, one that was generally much more sought after than that weird tablet box from years prior. Funny how putting your game on a platform people actually have leads to good sales. Fucking mind-blowing revelation, I know. But until that point, Bayonetta 2 simply came and went without much attention from anyone. Sure, it got a major nomination from the Dorito Pope, but that shit means nothing after a few days of online discourse every year.
It really seemed like Bayonetta's time in the limelight was already over, and this sequel was just a vain attempt to keep that fire going. It was very certain that Bayonetta was just gonna end up forgotten by the passage of time, a contemporary relic of the 7th generation next to Dead Island and Lollipop Chainsaw.
Is that game any good? After the second game's failure, most people doubted that Nintendo would even bother with Bayonetta again, and since the flame fizzled out after 2 different publishers gave it a chance, things were looking grim for the witch. That is until one fateful day, December 15th, 2015.
Don't get careless, Pit. A challenger approaches.
Huh? Oh, another angel. Must have missed one. Let's dance, boy.
On that day, Bayonetta was announced to be the final DLC fighter in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS. This was a major event for the history of the series because even the most sought-after third-party franchises can only barely make it in, and this was before Ultimate arrived, which opened the floodgates for endless possibilities. People thought Cloud was as far as Nintendo would go, but they really threw a curveball to Smash fans by putting her in the game.
There actually was a cult following for Bayonetta to get added into the game, but it wasn't as huge as the crowds wanting characters like Banjo or Geno.
Geno? Geno? You recorded a script, I assume you took multiple takes, and you said Geno? I assume you mean Gino? We spelled it Geno! How do you read this and think Geno? I didn't plan that at all. That's just what he sent to me. Oh my fuck.
Bayonetta being the first hack and slash rep in the franchise wasn't anything to scoff at. Sure, she was sexually toned down to fit into the game, but her overall implementation was very true to both of the games.
This unfortunately came with the caveat of Bayo being the most broken and overpowered character in the game, even after nerfs. She essentially terrorized the game's competitive scene for years before Ultimate decided to actually balance her out and make her actually fair to fight. Regardless of how you feel about her inclusion in the first place, I think it's safe to say that Smash Bros. Really gave a boost to the series' popularity and longevity. She's actually one of my most played characters in Smash Bros. Ultimate. I love her stylish air game, it's really wacky. Despite Bayonetta 2's commercial disappointment, Nintendo and Platinum Games continued their working relationship for years to come. But Bayonetta 3 wouldn't be announced until late 2017, and even then it just started development, so we wouldn't see it emerge until almost 5 years later. Does another sequel finally bring in the best of the old with a healthy amount of new? And is an 8-year gap between sequels too much time or not enough time to properly innovate? Join us next time as we find out when we take a look at Bayonetta 3.
We interrupt this program to bring you...
How's it going, fellas? I know I typically end these videos with like a wall of text with music in the background giving minor updates about the current state of things, but considering what happened, I feel like now would be a time to do something different. You know, a bit of a recording instead. This right here is being recorded on Friday the 29th. I'm assuming this video could get done on either the 31st or the 1st. I guess we'll see when it gets uploaded. If you've been keeping an eye on the clock since the beginning of this year, you might have noticed that the last review was literally 8 fucking months ago. And we're nearing the end of August, and now the first review of the year is being uploaded to the channel, which is, without a doubt, my worst pace yet. Possibly ever. I don't know if this is going to happen again. Considering the time lost and, you know, the lack of updates on this channel outside a handful of commentaries that I just kind of did on a whim, you might be wondering if there was anything severe going on behind the scenes. Is Mr. Toasty Man alright? Short answer, yes. Long answer, also yes, but fuck me, this year has been ridiculous so far. I went into January pretty optimistic, ready to start scripting and recording almost immediately, even though it was just days after the Oogie's Revenge video was uploaded. Playing Bayonetta 2 again for recording footage for the review, it really... Yes, bro, we know you have a motorcycle. Anyway, playing it again for the review really felt like the most mundane playthrough of a game so far on this channel when it comes to recording footage. It's likely due to the factors that I stated in the review, with how it just basically felt like more of the same and had pretty much the same amount of new content in a sequel as like a new Super Mario Bros. Game, if that makes sense. But earlier in the year, instead of immediately thinking, wow, this is disappointing, I'm going to write that in the video, I was struggling to think of anything to say about the game at all. Like, it felt like, it's like writer's block the video game, if that makes sense. Like, scripting was fucking impossible. So writer's block definitely took place for a few months. I thought taking a month or two off from video making would have been perfectly fine. You know, just taking a little bit of time for myself, because if I was basically consistently making videos for like 3 years now, so I think, you know, a tiny break was kind of in order. That little break of mine was only supposed to last until around March, but then other shit kind of happened. A lot of frustrating IRL shit has been happening around that time in the spring, and eventually that just culminated into the point where I just thought to myself, and even said to a few people in private, fuck it, I don't care about the video right now, I'll get back to it sometime, I don't feel like it. Without going into too much detail for the sake of time and privacy, if I were to quickly describe the IRL shit that was happening to me around that time, at first it was just my bank fucking me over out of a loan payment and costing me hundreds of dollars. And a few weeks later, when it was tax time and it was time to file, for some reason, none of the W-2s that I got mailed had the first fucking page, so I couldn't do them. Eventually, I got that shit settled, and I'm with a different bank now, so basically those problems are kind of non-existent now. Throughout early 2025, I've also been developing some serious, you know, worry warts about a lot of people around me. I'm not going to go into details about every single one of them or even name names, just, you know, for the sake of privacy. I highly doubt they want their, you know, personal issues broadcasted like this. But it clouded my mind throughout the next few months, and it ultimately culminated to the point where sometime around mid-June, when a very severe development happened regarding someone close that I personally knew, I straight up had a panic attack at work. I know it's like literally the meme, you know, oh, realistic depiction of a panic attack. But the point is, it was definitely a crazy first experience, and I definitely had to calm myself down as the night went on. Thankfully, something like that didn't happen again, and I was pretty strongly convincing myself that the rest of the summer would go a lot better. It kind of didn't. July kind of kicked off with me having to drive my mom to the emergency room where she would then get diagnosed with bronchitis. And then around the same time, I had to give over $700 to the city in taxes because it turns out my job, which I've had for a year and a half now, was taking out money for city taxes, but not enough. And it just kind of added up over the fucking last year or so, and they were like, yo, give us our fucking money, bitch. Useless HR lady claims she can't do anything about it, even though it's literally her job, and every other person I talk to tells me to talk to her, so that's fun. That wasn't so much a money issue, because I could definitely afford it, but it's mainly the principle of the matter that shit shouldn't be happening in the first place, and it's just that much of a headache to even fix, because, like, it's just fucking stupid, you know? Essentially, it was just frustration after frustration after frustration throughout most of the year, and that's not even getting into just the news and the world being terrible. That ultimately culminated into me just taking a break from social media and just doing other things in my free time. I've definitely been using these off months to not only self-improve, but also, you know, meditate, if you will. There have definitely been good things that came out of this year for me. Like, I have my own vehicle and insurance now. I went on a diet, so maybe in a few months when you see the Bayo 3 video, I'll look like Skinny Peter. Probably not, but it's a possibility. Because of some friends falling on hard times, I've definitely been spending a lot more time with them, both individually and in groups. It's been very fun. I've been playing through a lot more video games for the first time, instead of just revisiting older ones for the sake of videos and whatnot. There's definitely been a lot of recent releases that have caught my eye, which caused me to, you know, play them at launch or whatever. And there's also just been other older games that I just haven't played through yet. Matter of fact, while I've been editing this video, I've been playing Banjo-Kazooie for a little almost 2 weeks now. Yeah, this is the first time I'm playing through the game. I've played it a few times before, but I never bothered committing to a full playthrough, and now I am. And chipping at my backlog is definitely something I want to commit harder to going forward, because I just kind of have that problem where, like, I just own a bunch of games that I either haven't played or haven't gotten around to finishing. But back to the more important stuff, anyway. Starting in late July, I basically had this mental boot just go right up my ass telling me, make that fucking video already. If I were to accurately describe a general timeline of this year on what stages were fully completed for this Bayonetta 2 video, I finished the script in late May, and I finally got around to doing the camera shots in the middle of June, and then I finally did the audio dialogue in this little microphone here in late July. Well, not late July, it was more like mid-July. But then finally it was just overcoming that final hurdle of sitting my ass down and committing to an editing job. Like, for the first time in over 2/3 of a year. It's definitely started out slow in the early stages, but it's been getting faster as it goes on. I'm definitely in full fucking work mode right now, mainly because starting tomorrow, as of when I'm recording this, I'm going to be house sitting for my brother while he's away. So since that's going on, I at least want to get this video uploaded before I have to go back to work on Tuesday. So basically, I have mere days left to finish this video. I'm at like the 20-minute mark, actually. Jesus Christ. Massive fucking irony. Thank you, Discord. Massive irony that despite spending a majority of the year on hiatus outside of a handful of commentary videos to fill time, I still end up crunching a review in the end. It's a vicious fucking cycle. I can never escape it. For those wondering, you know, how Dino plays into all of this, considering this retrospective has been a collaborative effort, basically he's been busy with a lot of IRL shit, and he was perfectly understanding of me wanting to take some time away, so he started making his own video in the meantime about, like, Bleach covers or some shit. But after, you know, most of the year feeling completely demotivated in terms of creation, I've definitely got a lot more adrenaline in my system now. I want to start making videos again. Since getting motivated again, I've definitely had a few IRL incidents happen, but they've still not fazed me in this regard, at least. One of these incidents was actually having to put our dog to sleep, which definitely hit me a lot more than I thought it would, because it was definitely a possibility that I saw coming due to the circumstances. It was certainly a change that I initially struggled to get used to, like, physically. Like, emotionally, I got over it relatively quickly, but it's still one of those things where, you know, you just, it's so crazy that you keep forgetting it happened. I'm gonna try not to go on a full tangent about that, though, considering I'd rather just paint the full picture rather than going into basic events and like some massive fucking like sob story.
Send money now. My wife left me. I drink. My Ferrari explode. Please.
Point is, a lot of things this year, while not putting me in like a depressive mood or anything, I'm still, relatively, high spirits kicking. A lot of things on my mind have had me stressed and anxious, and it's demotivated me creatively, at least. In terms of future output, while I want to improve and I want to promise good things, if we're being realistic, I just can't promise anything because I even struggle to get commentary videos out on time, let alone full reviews. Like, even the New Year's update was delayed. That's kind of embarrassing. The only video that's come out on time this year so far is the fucking 4th of July commentary about physical games. But on the bright side, what I can say is that I've definitely got plenty of ideas for videos in the future. I've still got plenty of things to talk about. It's just that developing those ideas is simply a matter of circumstance, as it has been this year. And while I'm on the topic of videos taking a while in general, I've always noticed that ever since I started making content regularly as of a few years ago, whenever I would talk about a delay or maybe just a certain time that I'm not sure a video is going to get uploaded, I would definitely get a handful or even more comments telling me, "Take your time, you're good, no rush, we'll be fine waiting, it's no big deal." I've definitely heard this sentiment from not just comments, but people I talk to IRL as well, the people who are aware that I make content. And I will say that while I definitely appreciate the kind words and the fact that you guys are patient for me to, cook in the background, I guess. What really bugs me is the principle of me having to take this long in the first place. Like, I have a work ethic. I want to push myself to do things in a timely manner. At least that's the case when I actively make content instead of taking months off. And oftentimes it feels like videos, even when I'm actively working on them, don't hit the deadlines that I initially want. I'm still really pissed at myself for not getting the Bayonetta video done until December of last year. Like, that shit was... I was fucking pissed off at myself for that. And I made the decision to make up for the wait by squeezing in another review in the span of a fucking month. I am not joking when I say that even though very, very light scripting for Oogie's Revenge began in November while I was editing Bayonetta, I literally started recording gameplay footage right after the Bayonetta video went public on YouTube. Damn near all of my free time outside of my job was spent working on that video. And on the weekends when I wasn't working, I was spending nearly all fucking day in Power Director. And I think it's ironic that despite the amount of crunch I was relatively putting on myself, that was honestly the most fun I've had doing a video all year, next to like the Klonoa retrospective, I guess. Because Oogie's Revenge was such an anomaly of a game and I had so much to say about it that it just made for really good content in my opinion. It's one of my favorite videos thus far. But I have a feeling that like part of the reason I ended up getting writer's block in regards to Bayonetta 2 was because of like slight burnout from making that much content in such a short period of time. So while I'm definitely going straight into making the Bayonetta 3 video once I'm done with, my current IRL business and this video, I still am going to be taking my time. It's probably going to be up in October. I know I said I couldn't promise anything, but that's my goal, okay? Even though I don't have a set specific schedule for YouTube videos and I am not financially obligated to make this content, I still want to put it out on a semi-regular basis to make my subscribers feel justified in subscribing to me, if that makes sense. And seeing this massive wait take place and still seeing some comments telling me, "Don't worry, take your time, we're good," I just want to say thank you. I genuinely am grateful, and I love how I have patient fans that are willing to put up with my stupid bullshit. And because of the massive wait and the forgiveness that I've gotten from you guys, I genuinely want to get at least 2 more videos out this year. Like, even if the second one has to be squeezed out in, like, literally the last week of December, I still want to get it out just for the sake of, giving back. And I'm not talking commentary videos, I'm talking full reviews. So Bayonetta 3 and one more that I haven't announced yet. And as for that revisit game that I teased back in my New Year's commentary, that's probably going to be pushed into early 2026. Mainly just for the sake of wanting to get a more important project done first that I've been wanting to do for a while. And just to tease that revisit, no, it's not Multiverses. I'm not talking about that game again. I don't care. But yeah, one last apology for a relatively normal review on this channel taking 8 fucking months to come out. I kind of wish I got it out in June, because then I could have done like the 6 months meme I really hope this channel can return to some kind of normal. I'm not gonna, like, push myself too hard or anything, but I want to get out content on a regular basis, and I don't want to, like, dip for most of the year like I just did now. That's all I really have to say on the matter. I hope you guys have enjoyed the Bayonetta 2 video, regardless of how it turned out because of, like, you know, the absence and whatnot. Hope you guys have a good Labor Day. I'm out.